Happy Mother's Day, everyone. In the book of Acts, Paul tells us that God sets the times for us and the exact places where we should live. He does this so that we will perhaps seek him and reach out to him. And I know each and every one of us has someone that has helped us on our spiritual journey. Perhaps a coworker, a neighbor, a friend, a sibling. Some of us have even had our parents. And I am very blessed to have had my mom guide me in my own spiritual journey. I don't believe that I'm more favored than others because I got to live with her and grow up with someone who lived out Jesus' life every day. I actually think it's God's grace. He knew if I wasn't in the same home as a believer, maybe I wouldn't believe in him. Maybe I wouldn't make it. So I feel very humbled that God allowed me the privilege of growing up with my mother, who is a follower of God. You know, growing up, there wasn't a day that my mom did not wake up earlier than me. Every morning I woke up, I would see her in the living room with her Bible and pen and notebook in hand, writing scriptures, writing her thoughts, praying. And she'd tell me good morning, but I always knew she had to finish her time with God first, and then we'd have breakfast. As I grew older, we'd have times of God together at breakfast. My brother and I always prayed on the way to school, and my mom always told us when you don't want to pray, that's when you need to pray the most. As I'm sure you can imagine, toddlers do not want to pray on the way to elementary school. There were many times I saw my mom's faith at play. You know, she wrote many cards for our neighbors, for my teachers. She'd write scriptures in them. She'd invite people to events at church. She'd talk about what God was teaching her. And I used to say, Mom, why are you talking to them about God? They're not God people. Like, they don't go to church. Like, what if you're going to offend them? You know, what are you doing? And she said, no, you don't know what these people need. You don't know. And I'm just sharing my life. That's all I'm sharing with them. I'd walk away sometimes if she started up a conversation with God. I'd be like, oh no, and I'd walk the other direction. But over time, I've come to appreciate that. I can't imagine what it is sharing about God with someone and your children walk away in exasperation. But you know what you're doing is for your Father and for God. My mom is not like many moms. She didn't have a counterpart. My dad didn't come to church with us and load us into the car or do church events with us. It was my mom, my brother, and I every Sunday and every Wednesday. We lived in the deep south of Miami. And come on, Miami. And church used to be downtown. So she'd load us up and we'd drive the 35 minutes to go to church. And now that I'm older, I see that, and I know my mom was never forced to do that, and she never did it because she was guilty. Every time that we went, even if we turned up our nose and said, we don't want to go, can we watch TV, can we do something else, she would tell us, it's important for us to be with our family. It's important for us to be together. And I was so grateful for that growing up, and I do feel like all of you are my family, but because of that, because I was trained in that aspect of faith. You know, when I became a teenager, I had a lot of questions about God. I was always obsessed with doing the right thing. I was a straight A student, captain of my soccer team, part of FBLA, FEA, FFA, all the acronyms in high school, NHS. I was in it, and I was an officer in it. But as I grew older, I started to get frustrated. I knew I wanted to be a good person. I had grown up going to church, and I thought I was always doing what was right. My conduct was excellent in school. But as I entered high school, I realized everyone had different standards of what was good. And that was really confusing for me. I was often confused when people would say certain things were right, and I didn't think they were right. And how could I reconcile this? You know, once we had a debate in my 9th grade class about the golden rule and why we should live by it. And I said, I have a really hard time with this because different people think different things are good. One person might want a surprise party and the other person hates surprise parties. One person might want to ask how someone's doing or be asked that, and another person doesn't. How do I know how to be good to other people if we don't all have the same definition of good? And I asked some of the members of church, some older women who I knew would be really honest with me, to study the Bible and to read scripture. I wanted to know how I could reconcile this in my mind. Was God's way really true? Was this just some nice thing I did growing up? And as I studied the Word, I really saw my self-righteousness. You know, to the world, I was good. I was a straight A student. I did sports. I always respected others. But to God, I was constantly pushing him away. I was self-righteous. I was prideful. I was unforgiving, very unloving, and if you knew me then, I was very critical. And as I saw this and wrestled with it, I remember telling my mom things that I was learning in my Bible studies. She gave me a lot of space in my Bible studies. I would study the scripture and I'd come home. I'd study the scripture with members of the church and I'd come home and I'd tell her and, I'd say, wow, I saw my self-righteousness today, or I'm really unloving, like I'm really a heathen. And, it's always hard for parents to hear bad things about their kids. And I could see a look cross my mom's face, and then another look. And she'd never balk or tell me those women didn't know what they were talking about. She gave me space to really wrestle out the scripture and to wrestle out my own heart with God. And I'm so grateful for that because she really entrusted me and surrendered me to her family, to people who could see me, to people who could teach me. And as I've grown older, I just appreciate that so, so much. And I'm not a mom, but I can only imagine the kind of courage and the kind of faith that takes. On July 6th, 2007, I made Jesus Lord of my life. It was a wonderful day. It was a stormy day, lots of thunderstorms. It was one of those get in real quick and get out so you don't get struck by lightning. But it was a wonderful day, and I'm so grateful to my mom for helping me see the mysteries of God, for helping me get to the point where I could receive redemption for my soul from God. And it's truly my own. It's not hers, but I'm so grateful that God allowed her to walk with me and allows me to have her as a partner in my faith. So in Acts 2, it says, the promise is for you and for your children and for all who are far off, for all whom the Lord our God will call. Thank you.